atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Here, ready to move out.
Before we start, I'd like to say something. There's no reason why you shouldn't have complete confidence in your chances to come out of this thing alive in one piece.
From coast to coast, from border to border, from one end to the other, and all points in between. The Classic Guitar Rock Podcast is on.
Yes! That's awesome!
We crank up and break down the great guitar-driven rock of the 70s and 80s, and you are invited to come along.
We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
And now your hosts, Jeremy and Jeff.
1/2 teaspoon for fast, effective relief.
It's time for the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast.
Well, welcome to the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast. This is episode 7, I think. Yeah, episode 7.
Woo-hoo.
And I'm Jeremy here with my partner, Jeff. Jeff,
Howdy.
It's been a while. How have you been?
I've been okay. I've been all right. Crazy world, crazy end of the crazy year, and then a start to a crazy new year.
I know. It's like, come on.
Of course. What else is left?
I will say this, and the last thing we ever want to do is get into politics. But the best thing you can do is just turn your TV off. Crank up your music, and you'll be happy. There you go.
Plug in, strum, jam.
That's right. That's the secret. So how was your Christmas?
Christmas was okay, kind of uneventful, but New Year's was a little more exciting.
Good.
We went up to Steamboat.
Oh, nice. Very.
Yeah. My 5-year-old took his first snowboarding class, and we were there for New Year's Eve. So that was kind of cool.
Good.
Yeah, it's a nice place.
I am I love to ski. I'm not a great skier. I've never snowboarded. Do you snowboard yourself?
I do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
See, I've never snowboarded. I've got nephews that are like excellent snowboarders and skiers.
Yep.
I've never tried to snowboard. I am a solid, good intermediate skier. I'm not great. I'm lucky if I get up once a year. And I, to be honest, I didn't ski at all last year, but there have been years where I've gone up 4 or 5 times. Love to ski. And of course you're in skier's heaven where you live.
True.
So,
I used to ski as well, being from Connecticut.
mm-hmm.
Again, yeah, we'd go up 3 times a year, 4 times a year. Icy, sometimes just horrible conditions, really. I moved out here, Colorado, and hit a powder day.
Right.
And if anybody out there has, snowboarded or skied powder, it's a whole different experience. And so that's when I transitioned to snowboarding, and being on a snowboard and powder is, if you've ever surfed, I'm sure it's similar, but just that leaning back a little and just, whoa, it's an amazing thing. It's just, so I stuck with that.
I will tell you this. We spent our New Year's in Montana.
Oh,
and I told
cool.
you I got my old snowmobiles, an 82 Yamaha Enticer. So we were running all over the place on that old 82 Enticer, and we just had a blast. So
fun.
No one got hurt. So it was a good time was had by all. So we have started a Patreon site.
Oh,
so what that means is I'm seeing us making upwards of $8 to $12 a month here rather soon. If we can get 3 patrons, that's all. 3 patrons would get us to $9 a month. So for $3 a month, you can be a patron to this show.
That's a good coffee.
I mean, that's a cup of coffee, and you could be, there are other tiers. There's a $3 tier, a $6 tier, and a $12 tier. And if you're on the $12 tier, I mean, basically you can come on the podcast. Okay.
Sure. Why not?
No, why not? So yeah, we got Patreon, and that's my goal. $9 a month. That's the goal. If we can,
I love it.
$9 a month, I'd be a happy guy. So great. We'll post the link if that's something you're interested in. Obviously we do this for fun, but down the road, we were just talking about microphones before we started here. There can be some expense to doing things like this. So, if you have a few patrons, that can help defray the cost of a microphone or a mixer or computer.
Sure, of course.
Or even gear, if you want to review gear or albums, all of that helps to defray the cost.
That would be kind of cool to, I just bought you know about the Fender Tweed Deluxe 5 E3?
I do.
I just got a used one that was a remake,
Nice.
not a remake, like a kit from Mojo Tone.
Nice.
So they have these schematics, and you can go and you can build an amp for $600 or $700 versus
Instead of 12
thousands.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So did you build it or you bought it already built?
I bought it. It's right down there.
Beautiful.
It's tiny.
And that's the
Really tiny.
5E3. So it's got a 12-inch in it, right?
Yep.
And that's probably 12 watts? What's the wattage in that thing?
This one, 18 is
okay.
about, but this one I guess was wired to be able to take different tubes, and it goes up to 35 watts apparently.
Wow. And that's bare bones, no reverb on that thing, right?
No reverb, 3 controls,
all you
one
need.
tone, 2 volumes, 2 channels.
There you go.
That would be cool to bring that into the fray.
Oh.
I saw you playing guitar a couple episodes ago, right? Were you jamming on something?
I was. Yeah.
Nice.
Can't remember. Yeah.
And was that the amp in the room into the mic, or was you plugged into your interface?
I can't remember. Probably into my interface. Yeah, it's probably into my interface. I've got a Princeton Reverb reissue.
Oh, nice.
Mostly what I gig with. I have one of the Boss. Is it the ME80? I don't know. It's one of the Boss multi-effects things. And so last night, for instance, was the first time we have practiced in
9 months.
4 months.
3 months. Okay.
Yeah, we got together a couple times in practice, but we got together in practice. And so we were at our keyboard player's house, and it was an interesting thing is we did it all via wireless headsets. So I just didn't have any amps. None of us had amps. I just had my little pedal board with the cabinet emulator running through the mixer. And that's the way we did it. Socially distanced,
So nobody had amps?
No one had amps. We were all using headphones going straight into a mixer, electric drums. My brother used a direct box for his bass. And yeah, it was actually kind of cool because it sounded like we were on the radio.
Wow.
It's kind of fun. So
Kind of interesting.
yeah. All right. So great to have you on, Jeff. It's been a long time. Glad you had great holidays. Now, when we come back, the topic of our discussion is the songs and the groups that we cut our teeth on. Those songs that we first learned, struggled through. Well, I don't want to get into it too much yet because I have a key question I want to ask Jeff about this.
Oh,
but
exciting.
This is going to be exciting. We're going to talk about the stuff we learned. And also, here's a bonus question, Jeff. I didn't warn you about this. Is I want to talk about the gear we were using when we first started to play too.
Yeah.
I think that would be fun. So all that and more when we come back. Welcome back to the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast. It's Jeremy and Jeff, and the topic today is the music we cut our teeth on. And by that, we mean the first songs, the first groups that we listened to and wanted to learn. We're both guitar players. We both kind of weekend warriors, love to play the classic rock. And so we're going to talk about the stuff that was the first songs we actually sat down, either a turntable or a cassette, and we tried to listen. Now, I'll just say this, and I'll hear what you think, Jeff. When I first started to learn songs, I was always on a turntable. And man, it's hard to back up a turntable and find a spot, And so then I finally got smart, and even if I had it on LP, I'd put it on cassette to learn it. Because it was a little easier for me to zip back and forth on the cassette. And then I'm wearing out a cheap cassette instead of scratching my record. So that's what I started to do. What about you? Did you?
And now we're recording on cassette.
Yeah, exactly.
People want the vintage warble sounds.
That's right. They like that.
or a plugin that does it for you.
Exactly. So were you usually using a turntable or cassette when you were learning?
Let's see. I was learning in high school, probably a cassette, because I don't remember using the needle and having to deal with the turntable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think cassette for sure.
Here's what you could do though on a turntable. If it was not all turntables had a 16 speed, but if they had a 16 speed, you could play it at 16 and it would be at half speed.
Right.
And then you could learn the licks really slow. And they were about an octave, because it was half speed. It was pretty close to just being an octave off. So you could learn it in slow and then pop it back up to 33.
Nice.
So
did you do that?
I didn't have a 16 speed on mine, but it probably would have helped. Now, if you were like an audiophile at the time, reel to reel, you could have done the same thing, right? Usually flip it back and do that. So anyways, I want to start with you, Jeff. The floor is yours. I've made a commitment. One of my New Year's resolutions is I'm going to talk less. And so we're going to let Jeff tell us. The floor is yours, Jeff. I want to hear about the songs, the groups. When you were learning to play guitar, walk me through that. What was that like? Who'd you listen to? I'd love to hear it.
Surely. I have to give a shout out to my buddy, Dennis Attic, who was the first person to introduce me to guitar, I think. And he was playing in Stairway to Heaven, as many of us were back then, which, by the way, I listened to some podcasts the other day and they were talking about Zeppelin, and Stairway is just an amazing song, as overplayed as it is.
It is.
I mean, the solo is just incredible. Anyway, so of course I wanted to get a guitar and do what he was doing. So Stairway, at least the beginning, was really where I first started. But quickly it got a little more complicated for my level.
Yeah.
And we were listening to a lot of heavy metal, as we discussed in previous podcasts. So I mentioned it before. Paranoid was probably the first song I really worked on because of that right hand technique. I really wanted to get down that chugga, 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 that muted kind of thing. And it was 3 chords, maybe 4 chords, and it was fairly simple. So that was the first song we actually played in the band. One of our other friends played drums, whatever that meant back then. And that was one of the tunes that we actually tried to work on as a band. So Sabbath, and then Living After Midnight.
Yeah.
Judas Priest, again, pretty simple. Same kind of power chord kind of thing, right?
Right.
I mean, what else? I'm trying to teach my kids guitar now. And I'm like, what am I going to teach them? Like open chords? Or am I going to teach them just the A5 or, just the fifth and the root, just that simple kind of thing, right? So it makes sense. That's where I started. Let's see. Detroit Rock City, Kiss. That was a big one just because, I remember seeing Kiss live, and we talked about Kiss, just the show and the performance. But that tune wasn't so easy for me at the time. I don't know if you played any Kiss. I'll hear.
Well, when you said that, I don't know how to play that. I've never learned Detroit Rock City, but I was thinking that seems like that would be a little tough for a new guitar player to learn. There's a lot of parts. There's a lot going on that song.
Maybe the same thing for you, but we would learn one thing because we just love the song, and then we would quickly like, oh, okay,
that's enough of that.
That's enough of that. Dokken. Did you ever listen to Dokken?
Yep.
Alone Again. I remember hearing that.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, that like upstroke, that like E minor maybe was or something.
Yeah,
and I thought it was the coolest thing,
It's awesome.
Yeah. And God, the 80s, they love their reverb. On the drums, on the snare and everything. Yeah. Everything was so spacey.
Gated, yeah.
Big City Nights by the Scorpions. Another fun song, and I think the video for that really got me.
Yeah, that was a great video. Yes.
Live. I have Tesla. Do you remember that band?
I do, absolutely.
That album was amazing. Mechanical Resonance.
Yeah, I have that. It's on my
Modern Day Cowboy.
Yeah.
Which again, those guys were actually super talented. That album still stands up today, I believe. So we jammed that a lot. And then I got into a rock and roll band kind of against my will, meaning my friend was doing it and this other guy wanted us to start this band. And so I just kind of went along, but I got exposed to blues, rock, playing those kind of stretchy, that kind of like,
Yep.
Playing the 5 and the 6 and just really stretching out and learning that 12-bar blues. That's one thing I didn't really learn trying to play these other songs or thinking about it. So Joe Walsh, Walk Away, Funk 49. Aerosmith, we heard versions of these Aerosmith songs, but come to learn later, they were written by guys, Calvin Carter, Jimmy Reed, covered songs like I Ain't Got You. You know that one?
Right. Yep.
So we played that a lot. We played Mamakin.
Okay. Know that one really well.
Fantastic song. I mean, I would play that today in our band for sure. Walking the Dog. Great song. I mean, Aerosmith.
I know it. I'm just trying to remember it.
That was another old tune written by Rufus Thomas in 1963.
Nice.
You could find some of those recordings on YouTube. And we play that in our band now.
Great.
That soon. Yeah. Let's see. All Right Now.
Okay.
Free.
That's one. Yep.
Paul Kossoff. Pretty much just one of my inspirations. Molly Hatchet.
I love Molly Hatchet.
Flirting with Disaster.
I love Molly Hatchet. The first 3 Molly Hatchet albums, I just love them.
Yeah. So that was mainly where I was in high school.
Okay.
How about you?
It's funny. A lot of the same songs and groups that you mentioned. And I have to say this, before we started doing the podcast, I remember, Jeff, you sent me an example of your set list. Yeah. And I was impressed that your set list was a lot of deep tracks. I remember Neighbor Neighbor by ZZ Top was on your set list, and that is just, I've never heard a band out play that song. And that's one of my favorite ZZ Top songs. But that was great. So for me, I've already mentioned that Grinder was the very first song I sat down at a record player to learn how to play. Judas Priest Grinder. And the only reason I picked that is because it was easy. It sounded easy to me.
Of course.
Yeah. So I totally learned that song because it was easy. That was the first one. And then I mentioned to you that I bought the tab book for British Steel. And so then I went and learned, because once I learned about tab and figured out how to use tab, that kind of opened a whole new world. But even before the classic rock stuff, and I wasn't going to count these because they aren't really, when I first learned to play guitar, the first thing at least that I learned was the open chords. You learn the G and the C and the D.
Yeah, see, I didn't. I was a power chord guy.
Well, and see, that's just it, is when I teach kids now, I totally start with power chords. And the reason behind that is I hated learning to play guitar at the beginning because you wanted to rock and you were getting lessons from some old guy that was teaching you cowboy chords. That's not. So now I'm like, the first thing I want to do is I want the kids to be, I taught my daughters this, I've taught my sons this, is here's a big fat A power chord, right? You learn that shape and you slide that all over, because then in a matter of days, they're playing songs, what sounds to them like songs.
For sure.
And so, yeah, I completely agree. You start with power chords, and if you go back late, and I also would say, because for some reason, there was always this mentality, kids should start playing on the acoustic guitar. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Start them on an electric because it's cool, right?
And it's easier on the fingers.
It's way easier. The necks are smaller. It's easier to hold the strings down. So start on an electric, learn power chords. That way the kids are excited, and then they can go back and learn how to play open chords and acoustic guitars. That's the way I think about it. But I learned Grinder. I was just thinking back to songs I actually sat down to work out. So Grinder was the very first. Then I learned that British Steel album, kind of one song at a time. Another one, had to be a few years later. I learned Just What I Needed by the Cars.
Wow.
And the chords weren't that hard. The solo, that's the first solo I sat down and tried to figure out note for note, and got pretty close. I mean, it's still not perfect because that's kind of a tricky very tasty solo. So I took the time to sit down and learn that.
That's pretty advanced.
It's pretty, yeah. And I'd been playing for a few years when I did that, but a lot of those songs that you mentioned, Beating the Odds by Molly Hatchet, that was one I learned fairly early on. What else?
So when did you? How old were you when you started playing? I mentioned high school for me.
When I actually was getting serious about it was about 9th grade.
Yeah.
So about 9th grade, and a funny story. My dad, at the time I lived in Montana, my dad was actually was in the military. He was unaccompanied in Germany, which means he was at a base where the family couldn't go. So we all stayed in Montana. He's over there. He had this Harley Davidson, not a cool Harley Davidson. It was one of those mid 70s when AMF owned Harley Davidson, and Harley people will tell you this. During the mid 70s when AMF owned Harley, they sucked, right? And this wasn't a cool Harley. This was like a Harley 175 Enduro dirt bike. Super ugly, you know.
I didn't even know they made those.
Oh, they did. It's terrible. And so it ran. I mean, it worked, but it was kind of a piece of crap. And so a friend of my brother was willing to trade a little Fender Duosonic. It's like a Mustang. The Duosonic looks like a Fender Mustang. It's a cream color with a tortoiseshell pickup, a 67 Fender Duosonic. And he said he'd trade it for that Harley Davidson motorcycle. So my mom writes a letter to my dad. It says, hey, Jeremy's going to ask you if he can trade your motorcycle for this guitar. Actually, the next letter my dad got from me said, dear Dad, I traded your motorcycle for an electric guitar. So that was my first guitar, a little Fender Duosonic, which was a beautiful guitar.
Okay.
And this will kind of get us into our whole next topic about gear that we had. So that was my first guitar, electric guitar, a Fender Duosonic. And if you're not familiar with the Duosonic or the Mustang, they are great guitars for kids because they've got a smaller neck. They're easier to play. And so that was my first guitar. And I was actually playing it through my brother's bass amp. I didn't have an amp. He had a bass amp. He started playing bass about a year before I did. And that kind of inspired me to pick up the guitar. But for the first little bit, I just played right through that bass amp.
So your brother was obviously, I'm sure, an influence on you.
Yeah.
Not only listening or different style, different kind of music, but also instrument.
Yeah.
Playing.
He's 3 years older than me. And so, yeah, he picked up the bass. And once he picked up the bass, that kind of spurred my interest as well. And it used to frustrate the heck out of me because in the first few years, he was a bass player, you know, he played bass and he's musical, you know, he'd pick it up pretty quick. He had a really good ear, but it used to make me so mad because he played the guitar better than me. You know, I was supposed to be the guitar player. He was supposed to be the bass player, but he could play better than me. And that was always the case until about my senior year in high school when he left. And then when, you know, we got back together, you know, years later, you know, from that point on, I was always kind of the better guitar player just because I caught up with him and then kind of passed him by.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the beginning, it was very frustrating because he was a way better guitar player than me. But yeah, so much of what the early days was me and my brother playing together. He actually played with some guys in a band, and I didn't really have a real band situation until about my junior year in high school. Then I like you started playing together with guys in the band. So tell me about your first gig,
like playing out,
like where you actually played in front of people, even if you didn't get paid, doesn't matter. Do you remember your first gig?
Yeah. It wasn't when we were jamming the Paranoid and the more metal stuff. It was because of this guy who wanted to start this band that I mentioned. Mm-hmm. So he kind of was the driving force. So our high school had a walkathon.
Okay.
Right. Where you go get donations for some, you know, charity or some cause.
Right.
Go around the neighborhood, you know, give me $10. And we would walk around the school like, you know, 25 times.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then after that, people would come into the auditorium and we were the band,
Nice.
the entertainment. And that was the first time I stood up in front of really anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it was nerve-wracking as hell.
Scary. Yeah.
I mean, just the whole thing. But it was a cool experience.
Yeah.
That was it until after college, into way later, because I went to college and didn't really play anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Girls studying and partying were like, that's it.
Right.
So that was kind of a bummer there. Yeah, we had it recorded too on tape, and I have no idea where those are, because I would love to see that.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, with us, it was kind of similar. It was a deal kind of like that. Now at our school, in high school, I met a guy in class named Will. We were in speech class together, still one of my best friends. And he's an assistant chief of police right now. So I got to be in line. But and he didn't even play at the time, but we got together and we're talking about playing. And I had in another class, another kid named Jeff. All these Jeffs I know that play music. His name was Jeff, and he was into music. And it's funny because he and I always kind of had the concert shirts on and stuff. And so we'd talk to each other, and I found out he played the bass a little, and he knew this guy, Jerry, that I kind of knew, but didn't really know. And Will, my other friend, knew Jerry. Jerry was a drummer. So we all kind of decided we're going to play in the talent show. And the way the talent show worked, I went to a big high school. This was in Oklahoma. It was really kind of stupid. You had to audition to get into the talent show, because this is a 1 hour talent assembly. So I guess they can't have everyone. So you have to audition to get in. It's like America's Got Talent, or
you've got to have talent for the talent show.
That's right. So, and for whatever reason, they have this rule that they can only have one rock band in it or whatever, which seems stupid because you want all the rock bands you can get, right? So, there are people twirling batons and playing tubas and juggling and dancing, but they could only have one rock band. And there were 2 bands auditioning.
Okay.
And by the way, during all this time, my friend Will is learning to play guitar, right? So we're teaching him the power chords, and he picked it up really quick, and we got together and we're practicing at Jerry's house to play for the, the audition for the talent show is coming up. You got to be ready. And so we go into the audition, and this other band, there's this guy named Jonathan Cooley, and he was really good. And the band was really good. And they played Ain't That a Shame, kind of the Cheap Trick version, just pretty much like Cheap Trick. And we're like, well, forget that. We're not getting in the talent show, because they were really good. And then we went on and played, and we sounded okay. And we did an original. We did an original song, and we wound up getting in. And there were harsh words whispered around that we got in and not this other guy's band, because they were good. I mean, they were better than us. I mean, let's just be honest. And we like, well, why did we get in? And Mr. Adair, who was one of our favorite teachers and also on the selection committee, he said, well, the fact that you guys were playing a song that you wrote, we thought that was great. So, So that got us in. So the junior year, we played in the high school, and oh gosh, there weren't really many gigs. I mean, there were opportunities to play at pep rallies. We play a song or two or do something. And our deal was we always wrote songs. So there was a pep rally. We were playing our crosstown rivals, the Eisenhower Eagles, and we wrote up a song about it,
I think that's cool.
It was some progressive rock sounding thing about, I don't know.
Kick your butt.
Yeah. Kick your butt, that type of thing. So I do have one funny memory though. I remember a girl in the class said she was going to have a party and she wanted our band to play. And we literally knew like the 3 original songs. So when we got together and practiced, that's what we'd play, our 3 original songs. And we're like, well, we're going to have to learn some songs for this party. And it was like coming up in like a week. And me and my friend Will, we actually skipped school on a Friday with the intention of we're going to learn songs. We're going to spend all day learning songs. And so we worked out. Remember Say What You Will by Fastway? Do you remember that song? Say what you will.
I do remember that name of that band.
So
but the
it's a cool
song,
song. Go check it out sometime.
I will.
So we learned that kind of. I mean, when I go back and listen to it, we didn't really play it right, but we'd play it close enough that we could sing it right, and no one would notice. But I can remember skipping a full day, and we were learning that. We were learning 38 Special. I remember summer of '69. We were working out that other Bryan Adams song, Somebody. I Need Somebody. You know, we're learning all these songs. And then the party never happened. So it was all for naught. But we did kind of, you know.
So the talent show, you guys didn't win?
They didn't have winners in the talent show.
Oh,
it was just a talent
just
assembly, and they never really. That's not true. That's not true. They did pick the junior year. They did pick a winner, and then I think after that, our senior year, we got into the talent show again, and I don't think they picked a winner because there was some drama my junior year that the everyone pretty much thought that it was rigged. And no one thought we should have won, I don't think, but there were several really good singers, and the gal that won did something else that everyone thought was lame. And so anyways, it was drama, you know, high school drama.
Oh yeah.
High school drama.
My public high school was known to, let's just say you could kind of mess around and not really graduate with any kind of knowledge.
My kind of school. Yeah.
So my parents sent me to a college prep school.
Good for you.
Because, in retrospect, no, because I think at a bigger public high school, maybe like yours, I would have been exposed to talent shows or more arts, more music versus go to college. You're going to college, son.
Right.
So I wish I had more of that kind of thing, because maybe we would have done more talent shows, more whatever back then.
Right.
I had to Google this because I forgot what kind of guitar I had. I mean, I knew it was an Ibanez.
Right.
And it was black. So I Googled Ibanez mid-'80s electric guitar.
Right.
Sure enough, they're still selling them in Guitar Center. It was an RG220B. I'm looking at the picture and I'm like, oh my God, it's bringing me back. Tremolo, you know?
Yeah,
it's not a tremolo.
It's a vibrato.
It's a vibrato.
You're right.
So that's amazing.
So explain to our audience what the difference between tremolo and vibrato is, because you're right. Many times amplifiers and guitar companies get that backwards.
Yeah. Tremolo affects the amplitude or the volume, let's say, right? Yep. So loud, soft, loud, soft, loud, soft.
Yeah. Tremolo is volume.
Yes.
Vibrato is the
pitch.
Changing of the pitch. Right.
Yeah. So when you've got that bar in your hand and you're going up or down, obviously it's going wee. That's a pitch thing. So it's
a vibrato bar. Right. And we call it a tremolo bar, but it's not tremolo.
I want to do some research on that. Maybe we can talk about misnomers and incorrect kind of marketing things that happened over the years.
Yeah.
So anyway, but black Ibanez, it was a cool guitar from what I remember.
And you know what? If you still had it from that era, it's probably worth something. I've got, if this was video, and I guess I could show you, you know, we recorded in video, but obviously the podcast is not video. And I didn't have it then, but I have in my shelf here, I have an 83 Ibanez Roadstar. It's like a Strat.
Okay.
And I would put it up against any real Stratocaster any day. It sounds more like a Strat than any Strat I've ever owned or played. Just a great guitar. Ibanez made phenomenal guitars. That Roadstar is an awesome guitar. But when I started, I remember I told you I had the little Fender Duosonic, and this is a whole nother episode, a whole nother chapter. I could write a book about the idiotic things I've done with gear over the years. And the first idiotic thing, and I'll blame my brother Jeff for this one. Okay. The first idiotic thing we did, I told you it was a cream color. It was a 1967 Fender. So right there, if I still had it, it would be worth money. Okay. Cream color, tortoiseshell pickguard. We thought it would be cool to paint it.
Of course.
So we painted it metal flake blue, and we didn't replace the pick guard. We painted over the tortoiseshell pick guard white. Okay, so screwed it up. Okay, looked really bad, but then it gets worse. Then I go in and trade it in on a, what did I trade it in on? I traded it and a little Fender Harvard Reverb that they made in the late or the early 80s. It was a Harvard Reverb, was a solid state amp with a 10-inch speaker. It wasn't a great amp, but I took that Fender guitar and that little amp, cute little amp, and I traded it. And the guy that let me do this, I hope he's in hell, because he should, even though he's a pawn shop owner and he should have said, kid, look, you know what? I could make this trade, but I wouldn't sleep at night if I did it. But he didn't. He made the trade. He took that Fender guitar and that little Fender amp that I wanted to trade straight across for a Crate amplifier. And this was when the Crate amplifiers were actually crates, right? They were made of wood. They had these wood finished sides. It was a piece of crap amp. Terrible amp that probably is worth, today would be worth $30 for that guitar of mine that I traded. That
you didn't have a guitar.
Oh, yeah, it was.
You lost your guitar.
Well, but see, in the meantime, I'd gotten a Fender Stratocaster copy, which wasn't a bad copy, but yeah, it was just idiotic. It was. I get mad just thinking about that. But anyways,
pawn shop. What do you?
Pawn shop. Oh, I know. Then my brother had an old pair of water skis that he traded for a Univox Les Paul copy. That actually wasn't a bad guitar. And when I look on Craigslist now, those Univox Les Paul copies, even with the bolt-on neck, they're like $300, $400.
Oh, they had a bolt-on neck?
It's a bolt-on neck. Yeah. Huh. But it had DiMarzio Super Distortions in it. Someone had put some good pickup.
Cool.
But anyways, that's a whole nother topic, Jeff. I have done, I someday will write a book about the terrible things I've done with my music gear. Well, then there was the Les Paul that I traded. I didn't trade it. I sold it. And the money that I sold it, I got $500 for it. And I bought a drum machine and a 4-track. And both of those the drum machine and the 4-track within, 5 years were each worth about $25.
What was a drum machine?
Maybe 50. It was a Boss DR550.
Okay.
Which brand new was like $500 or $340. And then I got a 4-track, which was like $400. I don't remember, a Fostex 4-track.
I had one of those.
Yeah. But I think I sold it later for $40 and the drum machine for maybe $40. But had I kept my Les Paul, it would be worth, some money today. But again, stupid.
Yeah, Do you have I wonder if our listeners know what the term gas means?
Well, I do have gas.
When it comes to yeah.
No. Well, I have both kinds of gas. But the one you're talking about, gear acquisition syndrome or guitar acquisition syndrome. Yeah.
Yes.
I totally do. And actually I have it more about amplifiers than guitars. I'm more of an amp guy than a guitar guy. What about you?
I think so. Because I'm about 50-50 right now.
Okay.
But I think I am leaning toward the amp world. I think can affect my tone anyway, more than the guitars.
That's kind of where I am.
In general, unless you're buying something. Right. So I have a Les Paul and I think I'll buy an amp and I'm like, is it the amp? Is it the guitar? I think it's the amp. I'll try a new amp and like, whoa, it's totally different.
I agree. I think it's more an amp. And I have a weakness. I mean, I have a weakness for, I don't go buy expensive amps. I have a weakness for cheap amps. I'll see I paid $40 last week for a late 70s Ampeg SS70 amp, solid state, 70 watt, single 12 amp, $40. And it's scratchy. There's shorts all in it. I mean, but for $40, I mean, and that's the problem is I've got a basement full of amps that almost work.
How many amps do you have?
I got them cheap. I've got here right now in my basement, I probably have about 8. But I got a few others in other places, sequestered in other places.
Are you
I've
electronic guy?
What's that?
Are you an electronic guy? Can you fix them?
Problem? No, I can't. I mean, it would make sense me buying broken down equipment if I could fix them, but I can't really. Instead, it's just something my wife can beat me up over. Don't you already have enough amps? Well,
they'll never understand.
I know they don't. They don't understand gas. That's right.
Well, they do, except it's not gear. It's something else.
Something else.
Somebody, maybe this is chauvinistic, but somebody would say shoes. Someone else would say something else. But
well, that's a good point.
I mean,
no,
10 pairs of shoes, 20 pairs. Some guys 200.
Yeah, you're right. And some guys it's guitars, some guys it's guns, some guys it's cars. So
yeah,
I mean, I just think that's a normal part of life. So anyway,
I think for me, with the whole internet world and reverb.com and Craigslist, you feel like, well, I'll get this thing, I'll buy this, and then I could always sell it. Much easier, much quicker than the old days when you had to like put an ad in the paper or something. And so you can kind of turn around, even if you lost a little money. So it feels a little less committed.
Right there, Jeff, that's the problem is I am continually, I mean, as we speak, I have like 5 things listed on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. I'm constantly buying and selling stuff, but the problem is I almost always sell it for less than I bought it. I mean, very rarely. And of course, the ones I tell my wife about are the ones where I just made $50 selling this thing, but the reality is I usually buy it and then I have buyer's remorse almost immediately. And I'm like, so 2 weeks ago, I go buy a little PV, what was it? A PV Backstage, little amp, nice little amps. And I paid like $75 for it. And I get it home like, why did I buy that? I didn't need that amp. And so fortunately, I turned right around and sold it for the exact same price I just bought it for. So you could say I broke even, except I drove 45 minutes to go get it and 45 minutes back. So I just got to learn. I got to say no. I've got to stop doing that. It's just part of the sickness, right? It's part.
I have it too. I went crazy with pedals, guitar pedals.
Oh yeah.
For the longest time.
Yeah. Do you still have a bunch of pedals?
I didn't really keep them a lot. Right. I would just recycle them.
Buy and sell. Yeah.
And lose money.
That's me.
But I think, when it all comes down to it, I'm just really convinced it's in the fingers. Most of it,
Yep.
One distortion and one overdrive pedal versus another. It's like, exactly. Come on, just play. And that's what I'm trying to tell myself. Just play.
I heard, I think it was Ted Nugent talking about the time that he and Eddie Van Halen plugged into each other's rigs.
Mm.
And he said, you know what? Eddie playing my Birdland through my rig still sounded like Eddie Van Halen. Yeah. And him playing Eddie's guitar through his rig still sounded like Ted Nugent. I really think it's mostly in the fingers. Yeah. And those are two guys that to me play completely different. Their rigs are completely different. And yet plugging into each other's gear, it was like, you still sound like who you are, fortunately or unfortunately. Right.
Yeah. You know what I'm actually struggling with too, to add one more quick thing, is playing by yourself, jamming by yourself, trying to get a tone. You're happy. You bring it to a different room or a gig. You play with a band with 4 or 5 other instruments, and everything goes out the window.
Exactly.
I can't hear myself.
Yep.
I'm buried in the mix. My solo, I wouldn't know. I turn it up, still can't hear.
It's
what's going on here?
Like Gremlins, or even this, Jeff. Even you stay in the same room, nothing has changed. You played in there one day by yourself. You thought, man, this is the best sound ever. I sound awesome. You can come back a week later, nothing has changed, and you still think, man, this doesn't sound very good today. So yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy, but it's a good crazy. And that's one of the cool things about playing. You know, the nice thing about, and it's something you probably can relate to this. It's a great release, right? It's a great thing. From the time we were 12, 13, 14 years old, we've always been able to go play. You know, even if it's just going down to your basement or your room and you play, it's a good way to relieve stress. It's just, I can't imagine not having music, playing music, listening to music. I
shoot me now.
Yeah, exactly. I could not live without it. And I just love getting together and playing. I love getting together with folks, you know, listening to music, doing what we do on this podcast, just talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Classic rocks.
100%.
Well, hey, this has kind of been a free roaming, free range episode, but I think it's been great.
Did you say Jeffisode?
It's a Jeffisode. Yeah, hey, I like that Jeffisode. I don't think I said Jeffisode. If I said
Gerasode,
that sounds like a medicine or something. So, anyways, it's been a lot of fun talking about this. I want to tease our next episode. At least I think this is the plan right now. I got a friend of mine. He's a former employee at the company. It's a company I work at right now. I've been with this company since 2006, but this poor guy had to sit through training classes of mine because I'm a trainer, right? So I'd give these classes. And he, about 10 years ago, went to LA, went to a sound engineering school. So his background is similar to yours, Jeff. And now he works for a studio and has actually, I hate him. I hate him because he posts these pictures on Facebook where he's like with Billy Sheehan or Nathan East, you know, famous people that are in the studio that he's working with. And I'm like, But anyways, we're going to talk to him. He's just a kid too. I mean, he's just, I'm jealous, but he's a great guy. And so we've got him lined up and we're going to interview him and ask him about some of the folks he's worked with over the past few years and his thoughts on what I want to ask him. So I'm giving it all away for next episode, but I want to ask, I would love to ask you this too. So think about an answer for this. I love the big bloated, overproduced albums from the 70s, you know, Jerry Rafferty, Al Stewart, Alan Parsons Project. I love those. ELO. I just love those. I would just love to get someone who's a little more current in sound production, their thoughts on some of those classic albums and how they're different, how it's done differently today and those sorts of things. So,
yeah, I definitely I would like to get his thoughts on, you know, like producers influencing the style or the tone or the quantization of the music.
Absolutely.
You know, like, is it like loosey-goosey, like it really should be, or are they trying to get some product out?
Exactly. That's a great question. So think of your producer questions, your audio engineer questions, because you'll have better ones than I will next week when we talk with Greg. His name's Greg. So anyways, that's coming up in episode 8. That's the plan right now. Again, we're on Patreon now, so we'll post a link to the Patreon link, and you can always email us at classicguitarrock@mail.com, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Jeff, it's great to see you. We'll see you next time.
You too, Jeremy. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening to the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast. Please like, subscribe, and share. You can email us at classicguitarrock@mail.com. We'll see you for the next episode of the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast.